Radio. Garrett and Dave here on a Friday. And I liked, one of the things I really liked about this newsletter is you didn't start with AW, you didn't start with WWE. You started with Lucha Libre, and then your second story was about
but it was
show.
But it was AW and WWE in the first story.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely related to them, but it's
hugely related to them, actually. Yeah.
Well, but it is something that is there's a depth to it because you understand the business of Lucha Libre.
To a degree. Yeah, I've been following it for many years. It's still interesting. I don't really think a foreigner can truly understand the business of Lucha Libre. I try, but it's just like the one thing I learned when I went to Japan was that like I can understand Japan wrestling pretty good for a foreigner. But when you go to Japan, you realize that unless you're living in Japan, you can't fully understand the business of Japanese wrestling either. So you do your best.
So the Lucha Libre story, the AAA and CMLL and WWE and AW, I'm just I'm reading these quotes by Dorian, specifically Dorian, and just kind of like the excuses. It's like almost like they're already being defensive about the decision, and I'm not even really seeing. And maybe it's just in Mexico. Maybe they're being criticized for it. I don't know where a lot of that is coming from, but it's just like why is everything so defensive from the beginning?
Because there's that feeling that you sold out to the Americans, and they have to justify. That's a perception that there is. It's like you sold our tradition. And every sport has that. You know what I mean? Like I'm sure that the sports teams that sold to Saudi Arabian businesses and things like that have the same thing. You have that defensive response. You know what I mean? It's all about money. Everything's about money right now. And I mean, the one thing like it's funny because we didn't talk about this one, but I think it was on Boxing Scene. But one of the boxing publications basically just got off on the media. Basically the boxing media. Welcoming Turkey and not looking into him at all. And now that like that story in The Athletic from this last week came out, how they're still just cozying up to him and not asking any questions.
Well, he owns Ring Magazine.
He owns Ring Magazine, and he's got. I mean, look at the coverage that he gets. I mean, there's no, everyone wants to be on his side, and I mean, it's to a very lesser degree we see that in pro wrestling, but certainly in boxing and in MMA. Well, especially because they've got their new promotion that's going to have the one of the most powerful guys in pro wrestling in Nick Khan, and the most powerful guy in MMA in Dana. And they're going to be partners with Turkey. In this thing that's attempting to basically take over the boxing business. So it's and I guess that like some media doesn't get credentialed now on his boxing shows because they're critical of him. So and obviously like if people who make negative tweets about how he handles his sports franchises get thrown in jail, that tells you the mentality that he has regarding criticism.
Yes, I think who did I hear? I listened to Chris Mannix, and there's a journalist. His first name is Keith. I forget how to say his last name, but they were talking about it. And the problem is you have somebody like Mike Coppinger who was working for ESPN. Like, how can he be critical of that guy when he's writing for Ring Magazine? Like, it's impossible.
Exactly. Yeah, you can't. And I mean, buying Ring Magazine and trying to make Ring Magazine back to being like the Bible of boxing, and the promoter actually controls it and owns it at the same time. And Oscar did too. Because I mean, it's just the nature of it's the nature of I don't even want to get started. I mean, because I drive people crazy on this one, in real life about the change in journalism, from when what you and I both learned to what it is now, and it's very sad. It's very, very sad. And I see it everywhere. I mean, wrestling is certainly part of it, but it's not anything compared or as important as the other aspects of life, and nor is boxing, or MMA as compared to other aspects of life where I see it, on an hourly basis essentially, where it's just like that thing that everyone's supposed to be. I mean, virtually nobody is, and it's sad, and it's led to a thing where even when you are, no one's going to believe you because everyone is looking for the reporter who will tell them what they want to hear, and if you don't, they just don't want to hear it. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, this is just both sides of the story and blah blah blah.
I mean, I heard that a lot WrestleMania weekend. Like if you had a conversation with someone who's excited about the show, and you had a critique of maybe one of the matches, like no, I don't want to hear. This is a weekend of celebration. Like I don't want to hear any negative stuff. Like I'm here to watch the. And so like that was what Vegas was.
Or people who didn't like it and didn't want to hear anything good about it either. Or I don't say didn't want to hear anything good, but weren't I mean, it wasn't like it wasn't like they were I don't know. It's like you have your two sides. You know what I mean? And it's if you're in the middle, you are in fact the enemy of both sides.
So weird.
And I mean, yeah, that's what it's become. And it's I mean, I know that like on our site, I mean, one of the things that I've seen and been told is that we're way too negative on AEW. And it's like their business went down. I mean, their popularity went down. Our job is to explain why. It's like, and it's not like we're negative on the great matches. If they have a great match, of course we talk about it and say it's a great match. But you can't ignore it. But
this website is very interesting because you are a business reporter while at the same time you are also the most famous critic, I guess, in pro wrestling. So you're kind of on both sides in a way. And so when you talk about one side of it, it may contradict the business side, and people go, "Oh, like he's forgetting about this part." But really, you're just talking about what you saw, and then you analyze the business stuff after.
But you have to talk about both.
Yeah.
I mean, if you ignore either one, you're not doing your job. You know what I mean? It's like if you're doing, I mean, if you're doing the business of movies, you can't just go and say, "Well, this movie did good." But sometimes the movies aren't that good. They're too good. They're formulaic, and they, whatever. And there's some classic movies every year that they're not big box office movies, but that doesn't make them bad movies because less people can see them at the box office. But you talk about both, because they're both aspects of it. It's like, like actors trying to win Oscars, which are not necessarily anything to do with the box office of a movie, or they have something to do with it. But you know what I mean? It's like the biggest blockbuster movies are not necessarily the ones that are going to win most of your big awards.
Like almost never. Like I don't know if it's never happened.
Almost never. Yeah, you're right. So it's like, but for some reason people think that in wrestling, like if it's you have your thing in wrestling where it's like. I mean, it's like if it's at WrestleMania, it must be great. I mean, like when we've talked about like the worst WrestleMania main events, some people will get really mad because it's at WrestleMania, it must be great, and that's the end of it, right? And it's like, and if it's if it's a great match and it's not with a major promotion, it can't count because it wasn't at WrestleMania or it wasn't at Royal Rumble or something. And I mean, I watched so many great matches this. It's like blew my mind. And there's matches I wanted to see that I didn't have time to watch. That's how many great matches there were this week. But I've seen so many great matches this week from everywhere. I mean, WWE had that ladder match last week. On last Friday on SmackDown. It's fantastic. The AW TV show. especially Wednesday. But Saturday had a good match, had a great main event, but Wednesday had two fantastic matches. The Stardom show was nothing but fantastic matches.
Now this is a bit of a silly critique that I saw that I really didn't pay attention to, but when you and Brian had recorded on Wednesday, I think, and the idea that you guys hadn't seen the Stardom show, but that maybe it wasn't Wednesday, maybe it was
Monday.
But then he had seen some of like the TNA show or something. It was like, how can you not watch, this? But eventually you're going to get to it because you have to cover it. You've been covering Stardom forever.
You try. I mean, it literally killed me to get to the Stardom yesterday. I mean, I watched a little bit on Wednesday, before watching, which to me was always like the no. You do not watch a great Japanese show before AEW and NXT, because in doing so you're going to be really negative on AEW and NXT. And in reality, it didn't happen because AEW was really good and NXT's main event had a great main event too. But often that's the case. It's like I do try to have a rule not to watch. In the old days, never watch a big New Japan show before watching Raw, because it's like, it's, when you watch one, the second one, even when it's good, becomes weak. I mean, like, I'll just give you an example. Is we were, I don't remember where we were, but we were on the road, and New Japan had the show in London that had I think it was Okada and Minoru Suzuki, and NXT had a match. I think it was Sami Zayn and Claudio in NXT. So it's many years ago, and we watched the New Japan show, and it's fantastic. And everyone was telling me, you got to watch this Sami Zayn and Claudio match. And I watched it, and it's like, God, it's so slow, and it's so weak, and it's just not crisp at all. You know what I mean? And everybody raved about it. And then, like, later I watched it again. It's like, oh yeah, for a WWE NXT match, it's freaking great. Mm-hmm. But it's not going to be as good as that other match, because it's just, when you see super serious and then you see American style, one after the other, the American style always is not always, but often is going to look weak. So that's kind of like my rules. Like, I don't get I don't watch WWE. And I sometimes do watch AEW after, because AEW can sometimes hold up to it. I mean, maybe even often now, maybe even often, but still, you've got to, it's a weird thing. But I watched the Stardom before the AEW, some of it, and then I watched the last match. I watched it, yesterday morning cold, which was just a phenomenal, 35 whatever minute presentation. I mean, from the entrance, the match was really great, and then the post match, the finish of that show, which is Tam Nakano in their last match, and Saya Kamitani just beating the holy shit of each other. Saya's got her lip just busted open from